The chamber was silent, but it pulsed with unspoken tension. The Galactic Council spire, a towering cathedral of light and gravity, drifted in perfect stillness above Luxor Delta, a neutral star chosen for its eternal twilight. Within, the voices of 1,000 species could be heard in hushed tones, clustered along concentric platforms that floated like petals around the central podium. Ethereal light danced across crystalline walls. Languages shimmered in the air as thought translation fields shimmered and HUMED at the center of the council. High Chancellor Virel stood motionless, the facets of his crystalline body refracting the light into prismatic beams. He did not need to move. When he spoke, it was through resonance, his voice ringing like a perfect chord plucked from the spine of the galaxy itself. Council members. Virel began, his voice reverberating in every delegate's mind, translated not just into language, but into intent, tone, emotion. The matter at hand concerns the Terrans, the species they call humans. A ripple of reaction passed through the chamber. A few murmurs. A few sparks of memory. Others remained still, disinterested. New species were found regularly. Most burned bright, then fell silent. This one, however, had drawn Virel's full attention. Virel gestured, and a projection unfolded from the council's central prism. A modest blue-green planet appeared, orbiting a small yellow sun. Earth, Virel said. 300 cycles ago, they had no presence beyond their skies. They warred among themselves with chemical fire and rusting steel. They poisoned their world and praised their gods while lighting cities with dead things pulled from the ground. Another gesture. The image shifted. Starships, terraforming domes, solar arrays blooming across asteroids. Now they have colonized 3 worlds beyond their origin. Faster than light travel, quantum-based communication, cultural unification, all in less than 10 generations. Whispers turned sharper. Delegates leaned forward. Some, like the archivists of Drawl, nodded solemnly. Others, like the gaseous Centaura, flickered in shades of concern. But one remained unmoved. Infants, Chancellor Grax of the Vorik Dominion growled. His voice was deep, like magma cracking stone. His massive body all plated sinew and serrated armor radiated disdain. They are infants in a jungle of titans, and we have crushed stronger than them before breakfast. Virel turned his luminous gaze toward Grax, his tone unchanged. They adapt faster than any species we've encountered. They survive environments deemed uninhabitable by most sapient life. They turn debris into weapons. They cry when they kill, and yet they kill better than most. More holograms appeared. A human child shielding an injured alien during a pirate attack. A human scientist reverse engineering foreign tech in a cave. A soldier dragging a wounded enemy to safety. Then another image, a scorched village, and humans emerging from the rubble, weapons made from twisted piping and broken drones. They are not predictable, Virel said. They are not stable. And yet they endure. Their history is equal. Parts miracle and massacre. Grax let out a low chittering noise of Vorik laugh. You speak of them like a storm, Chancellor. They are just animals in suits. Virel's core dimmed, a sign of internal distress few in the chamber recognized. I do not fear storms. I fear what comes after the storm is ignored. He let silence stretch until the weight of it pressed on every delegate's breath. Then he spoke again, voice sharpened by something no one expected from Virel emotion. Do not prod the sleeping forge. Humanity is not a hammer. They are fire. No one laughed this time. The sun over Ferix Prime burned a hazy red, casting long shadows across the dust-choked Colony Valley. Towers of metal and glass rose from the rock like forgotten monuments, half-built and dust-scarred, their solar vanes humming faintly with stolen starlight. The colony, a frontier settlement on the outermost reach of human expansion, was never meant to be glorious. It was meant to survive, and for a while, it had. Captain Elena Miles stood on the edge of the observation platform, her uniform jacket slung over one shoulder, boots caked in the red dust of this stubborn world. Below her, machines moved in the dirt, automated loaders, crop processors, heat exchangers. People moved too, though fewer now. Some had quit after the third solar flare knocked out half the colony's systems. Others had left when the terraforming engine stalled, but Miles stayed. They all stayed for their kids, their parents, their partners, or just to prove they could. She sipped a metal canteen of water, lukewarm from her belt pack, and stared at the cloudless sky. Then the warning came. Not a siren. Ferix Prime didn't have that kind of infrastructure. It came as a subtle flicker in the atmospheric sensor net, then a whisper from orbit. Then silence. The silence was the loudest of all. "Captain," said a voice through her earpiece, nervous young. "Probably Martinez from comms. We're getting. I think you need to come to command, now." She was already moving. Down the platform steps, boots pounding the metal grates, past an old woman watering genetically altered rootstocks. She didn't speak. She didn't have time. When she reached command, the screen was already red. The image showed a series of burning lines cutting across local space Vorik warships, big ones. Not scouts, not patrols. This was an armada. "They're coming straight for us," Martinez said. He stood rigid at the console, sweat streaking down his brow. "And they're not responding to hails. No broadcast. No ID. Just a hard burn at maximum thrust." "How many?" Miles asked. 17 vessels. At least 6 capital class. 4 destroyers. 2 landers already inbound. Her stomach turned to stone. She tapped her wrist and connected to orbital. Relay. Nothing. Static dot. She turned to the room. Engineers, medics, techs, a few off-duty miners and maintenance crew. These weren't soldiers, but they were hers. Get everyone underground. Level 4 emergency. Lockdown protocols. Tell engineering to divert all reactor output to the shield grid and someone wake up Central Defense AI. I don't care if it still thinks it's a toaster. Tell it to aim and fire. They moved without question. Then she looked up at the blinking dot on the main display. One ship had broken off and was accelerating toward the surface at impossible speed. It wasn't a landing party. It was a weapon. Miles ran. Through the main corridor, past the synthetic farms, the decommissioned mech bays, through the blast doors, into the old missile platform beneath Sector 7. She keyed the override. The door resisted, then hissed open. There it was. Half buried in dust and wiring. The last remaining surface-to-orbit launcher. Illegal. Unlicensed. Built from scrap. But it worked. She tapped the warhead interface. Only one was loaded. Not even a nuclear just. A depleted uranium spike with a chemical kicker. It would have to do. A deep rumble rocked the colony. Outside, the first Vorik lander punched through the atmosphere like a blade. Its hull shimmered black and green. It left a trail of fire in the sky. Miles locked the targeting system and whispered, "Come on, baby." Just this once, the missile fired. It screamed into the sky, a silver dart of desperate hope. And it hit. The Vorik lander buckled in midair, tore itself apart in a flaming spiral. It didn't fall, it disintegrated. For a moment, the ground. Crew watching from the surface screamed in triumph, but the other ships didn't stop. 4 more appeared behind the first. Descending like vultures, slow and methodical. In the command center, Martinez's voice trembled. "Captain ... One of the Vorik ships is broadcasting now. It's audio only. But I think you should hear this." "Play it," she said, bracing herself. A low, rasping voice came through the speakers. Cold, detached, hungry. "You were warned," it said. "Your council spoke of fire. Now you will understand what it means to be consumed." Miles stared at the speaker, fists clenched. "Evacuate the residential sectors. Get the children into the mines. Activate Defense Plan Orion." "But that's not even finished. It's barely—" "Do it." Outside, Ferix Prime sky began to burn. High above, hidden from their view, the Vorik flagship waited. And somewhere beyond the system's edge, Earth was listening. The stars over Earth shimmered with deceptive calm, their ancient light drifting peacefully across the skies of a planet on the brink of awakening. But far below that serenity, in the depths of Geneva's Earth Command complex buried beneath, 6 kilometers of armored rock and quantum interference plating chaos had a voice. It was the voice of the dead. They came from the clouds. We fired everything we had. Didn't matter. They're everywhere. Please, if anyone hears this. The transmission ended with a burst of static and a muffled scream. Then silence. In the operations chamber, known informally as the core, the silence was a living thing. Cold, breathing, watching. General Marcus Steele stood at the center of the circular war room, one gloved hand resting on the edge of the central table as dozens of tactical feeds danced across the curved display. He didn't flinch. His jaw was locked. His silver buzzcut glinted beneath the recessed light. In the silence, he was a monument. "Where?" he asked finally, his voice a slow grind of gravel and iron. A young officer, Lieutenant Rana, fresh from Luna Command, swallowed hard and tapped her console. "Ferix Prime, sir. Outer Rim Colony. Population 200,000. Civilian-class settlement. Minor defensive grid." "What's left?" Another pause. Her voice dropped. "Unknown. No communication since the final burst. Orbital satellites are dark. It's like the whole system went blind." Steele nodded once, turning to the shadows behind him. A figure stepped forward. Dr. Yara Voss, Earth's foremost cultural warfare analyst and former galactic envoy. Her black eyes held no fear, only purpose. "You said this would happen," Steele said. "I said they would test us," Voss replied. "Now they think we failed." Steele gestured to the ghostly still hologram above the table, Ferix Prime, outlined in red. "You were there," he said, his eyes locking onto hers. "You saw what the Galactic Council said about humans. You saw them laugh. I didn't forget," she said. "But now they will." He turned. "Bring in the Chief of Staff. Wake the Security Council. I want Fleet Command standing by in 10 minutes. And someone tell Project Dreadstar we're accelerating the timeline." Rana blinked. "Sir, Dreadstar isn't operational. It hasn't. Even passed. Neither did humanity," Steele snapped. "We went from combustion engines to orbital jumps in 4 generations. We don't wait to be ready. We become ready." Alarms flashed. Emergency channels lit up with incoming report sensor anomalies near the Sirius relay. Distress calls from mining outposts. Sudden interference with long-range communication buoys. They were moving faster than expected. Voss moved to the table and brought up a tactical overlay of the Ferix system. She gestured, and red arcs bloomed across the screen. Vorik fleet movement. Their attack pattern analyzed through stolen sensor logs. "They didn't come to enslave," she said softly. "They came to erase." Another aide ran in, breathless. "General, we have a transmission. Not from Ferix, but from the Galactic Relay near Luxor Delta. High Chancellor Virel of the Council. He's requesting immediate contact." Steele raised an eyebrow. "Put him through." A glowing crystalline figure materialized in the air above the table. Varel's voice was calm, but the rhythm of his core pulses betrayed his distress. "General Steele," he said, "it appears the Council's warning was warranted." "You don't say," Steele answered, folding his arms. Varel's glow dimmed. "You are to be informed that the Council has issued a Code Blue advisory. Non-engagement directive. Observation only. Earth must not escalate. Stop." Steele's voice cut through the air like a blade. "You warned them. They ignored it. You let the Vorik think we were insects. We sought balance. They sought blood." Varel's voice slowed, deliberate. "If you retaliate, the ripple may consume us all." Steele leaned forward, and for a moment the glow from the display etched harsh shadows across his scarred face, then let it consume. He ended the transmission with a flick of his hand. A moment later, the strategic doors slid open, revealing Admiral Kian Albright, head of the United Earth Naval. Command, flanked by two of Earth's most powerful A, is in containment frames. Albright saluted. "General, your orders?" "Mobilize the Indomitus line. Full burn to Ferix. Cloak until arrival. I want surprise on our side." Albright hesitated. "We'll be vastly outnumbered. If they're still there, it'll be a slaughter. Then we'll show them what humans do when we're cornered." Dr. Voss turned from the display. "There's more." Steele looked at her. "Go on. We cracked the Vorik language last month. Fragmented symbols found on one of their wrecked landers. I cross-referenced it with a captured AI memory node." "What did it say?" Her voice dropped low, the room straining to hear. "Consume the fire before it spreads. That's what they call us. Not a threat, not an enemy, a flame. They came to put it out before it grows." Steele stared at the Ferix projection, then back at Voss. Then they made a fatal mistake. He looked to the bridge commander. "Launch." The fleet. Outside the bunker, ships began to rise. The stars above Earth would no longer look down on silence. They would witness fury. The twin moons of Ferix Prime hung like silver scars in the blood-colored sky, their light fractured by plumes of ash and energy fire. The ground rumbled in pulses now like a heartbeat slowed by trauma. Across the shattered colony plain, the remains of Hope Sector burned in silence. Towers collapsed like dying trees. The main hydrovault, once a testament to human adaptation, lay gutted and steaming, the atmosphere around it trembling from the residual impact of the Vorik landers. Captain Elena Miles was still alive, but just barely. She lay beneath a collapsed section of the command dome, blood trickling down her temple, her left shoulder dislocated and pinned beneath a cooling girder. Smoke and dust clung to her skin, and her ears still rang from the concussive blast that had ended her command center. But her eyes were open. She watched a Vorik patrol pass through the wreckage, their black carapace armor gleaming like wet obsidian, their weapons alive with dim pulses of blue venom energy. They didn't move like invaders. They moved like executioners. Every building they scanned, every pile of debris they sifted through, they weren't looking for survivors. They were making sure there wouldn't be any. She gritted her teeth and twisted. Pain exploded through her arm and side, but she didn't scream. She bit down on the inside of her cheek until blood filled her mouth. Slowly, the girder gave way. She slipped free. She didn't know how long she'd been unconscious, but the sun had dropped low, and the colony, her colony, was gone. Elena limped through the ruins, crawling over twisted beams and scorched polymer sheets. Every corner smelled like ozone and fire. Every step reminded her that survival was no longer a goal. It was rebellion. Her comlink crackled. A weak pulse, barely a signal, then a voice. "Captain Miles, this is Chun. Repeat, this is Marcus Chun. Resistance. Cell 9 active. We're alive. Northern Ridge Caves. Encrypted beacon Theta 7. She stopped dead. "Chen, alive, and others too. Her chest tightened, not with pain, but with something she hadn't felt since the sky fell, a reason to keep going. She rerouted her internal map, dragging herself toward the northeast, across what used to be the colony's logistics depot. That's where she saw them. Humans. 20 of them, maybe more ragged, dirty, barely armed, standing in silence, watching a Vorik walker pass through the sector without noticing them. They weren't fighters. They were janitors, cooks, parents. She recognized a few, including Gara, the woman who once baked protein cakes for children's birthdays. She motioned low, and they saw her. One of the men, a mechanic, approached her with a look that was more question than hope. "Captain?" he asked. She straightened. "Barely. We're not done," she said. "The Vorik think we're animals running from fire." "What are we then?" the man asked. "We are the fire." They moved as one, slipping into the canyon crevices that led to the northern caves. The deeper they went, the more survivors appeared. Children clinging to parents, engineers piecing together drone parts, medics organizing supplies. This was not a colony anymore. This was a den of wolves. Miles entered the primary cavern to find Marcus Chun crouched beside a half-assembled railgun fashioned from a mining rig and atmospheric pump tubing. He looked up, saw her, and grinned despite the dirt and blood. "Still breathing?" he asked. "Barely," she replied. He stood, face hardening. "We've got maybe 200 left. Only 40 can fight. We've got scavenged weapons, one. Orbital uplink still semi-functional, and enough food for 6 days if we ration tight. Any news from Earth?" Chun looked down. "No, just stars." She stepped closer. "Then we make noise." Later that night, in the crater of what had once been the colony's transport bay, a trap was set. Using hacked Vorik beacon signals, Chun and a former subspace engineer named Arlena lured a patrol into the center of the ruins. As the Vorik examined the signal node, the trap activated. Dozens of electrified mining cables snapped to life, sparing them with improvised plasma bursts. The explosion that followed was heard across the entire valley. On the Vorik command ship orbiting high above Ferix Prime, Commander Raxer clicked his mandibles in surprise. A tech officer turned from his console, confused. Resistance. Pattern not consistent. Uncalculated behavior. Raxer narrowed his gaze toward the scarred planet below. "Begin neural mapping. I want to know what drives them." "They survive," the tech said, "but logic does not explain it." "No," Raxer said coldly. "Which means we are facing something worse than logic." Below in the caves, Miles stood over a crude holographic map of the Vorik landing zones. "We don't have warships," she told her people. "But we have tunnels. We have scrap. We have rage." Chun added, "They think this world belongs to them now. Let's make them choke on it." That night, 12 sabotage teams struck simultaneously across Vorik-held territory. They collapsed tunnels, overrode drone AI with hijacked children's toys, and rigged water plants to explode with vaporized sodium. And for the first time, the Vorik war machine slowed. In the dark of the canyon, Captain Miles looked up at the VOG machine slowed. In the dark of the canyon, Captain Miles looked up at the famine, distant shimmer of the stars. "Earth," she whispered. "If you're listening, hurry." Then she turned, eyes burning, because fire does not wait. The black of space parted like torn silk as the Earth fleet emerged from FTL, ship after ship dropping into real space with a roar of stretched time and compressed vengeance. At the center of the formation was the UES Indomitable, the spearhead of the Indomitus line, sleek, dark, predatory humanity's answer to annihilation. Admiral Keon Albright stood tall on the bridge, his uniform crisp, his expression carved from stone. The stars ahead twinkled with eerie calm, but Ferix Prime, just a pale orb in the distance, glowed with wounds. Dust clouds ringed it like ash halos. Heat blooms and radiation signatures danced across the surface, signs of battle, of fire, of something wrong. Confirm Vorik presence, Albright ordered. The tactical officer spoke without lifting her eyes. Sir, we have multiple energy signatures in low-orbit Vorik dreadnoughts, 4 capital-class vessels, unknown number of support ships. Ground presence is extensive. Any sign of survivors? A pause, then, confirmed. Encrypted Terran. Signal, Theta 7 beacon. Originating from mountain caves in the northern sector. Small population cluster, less than 200. Albright exhaled slowly. Then we're not too late. On a secondary display, Earth High Command's orders blinked quietly. Primary objective: recover survivors. Secondary: engage and neutralize enemy presence. Tertiary: gather intelligence. On Vorik strategy caution, Council monitoring POSA Sibili. Albright tapped the last line with his finger. Let them watch. He turned toward the massive viewport. The stars no longer looked like specks of light. They looked like witnesses. Deploy squadrons, shadow formation. Cloak protocols active. All ships prepare to burn. On Ferix Prime, in the scorched belly of Sector 19, Vorik Commander Raxa reviewed holographic maps of the resistance attacks. The enemy primitive humans had been expected to break. Instead, they had evolved. Within a matter of weeks, they had adapted, restructured, counterattacked. His claws twitched. Hive 12 lost. Hydrospire destroyed. Forward sentries missing. The tech officer bowed his head low. They spread, like toxin. Like fungus, Raxer hissed, like rot. But even as he spoke, a high-frequency ping reached his sensor node. An anomaly, unclassified warp wake detected. Outer orbit. Proximity vector suggests, then it hit. The first volley from the Earth fleet struck with no warning, no transmission. No ultimatum, no delay. Just wrath. Plasma torpedoes slammed into a Vorik cruiser, carving through its hull like sunfire. Through ice. Railgun rounds followed, each slug carrying the force of a meteor. The dreadnought shattered, its death flare lighting up the sky over Ferix Prime like a second sundot in the Vorik command center. Alarm shrieked. Raxer's mandibles snapped shut in shock. They came, he whispered. They came. On the UES. Indomitable. Admiral Albright's voice rolled like thunder through the fleet-wide channel. This is Admiral Albright to all Terran forces. This planet was burned in silence. We answer in fury. This is not a rescue, it is a reckoning. Engage. At will. The space over Ferix turned into a crucible of light and death. Human warships, smaller but faster, darted through Vorik formations like knives between armor plates. The Indomitus line lived up to its name, unyielding, relentless. Every ship. Coordinated fire through a quantum-linked battle net. The Vorik moved in hierarchies. The Terrans moved like a storm. On the ground, resistance forces led by Captain Miles watched the sky light up. Inside the northern cave complex, Chun clutched his battered communicator as it pulsed with green light and Earth Fleet signal. Tears streaked down his face, leaving trails in the soot on his skin. They're here, he whispered. Oh my God, they're here. Outside, the Vorik turned skyward in confusion, distracted, and that's when the humans struck. Booby traps. Set in rock walls erupted. Crates of scavenged explosives, rigged to plasma triggers, ripped through patrols. Militia fighters, farmers, teachers, mechanics burst from hiding with rail carbines and mining drills. Captain Miles led the charge through the eastern ridge. Her voice roared through the comms. Now, while they burn above, we burn them below. Every step forward was soaked in fire and fury. The caves echoed with gunfire and battle cries, and for the first time, the Vorik broke formation, not because they feared death, but because they no longer understood the rules of this war. In orbit, the battle reached its apex. The UES Dauntless took a direct hit and split apart, its crew broadcasting final messages through the battlenet as they redirected all power to its forward railgun and fired one last time, the rounds slicing into a Vorik battle barge and killing it alongside them. On board the Indomitable, Admiral Albright clenched the railing, watching as another Terran destroyer rammed a Vorik cruiser, detonating its fusion core in the process. "Report," he demanded. "Vorik line is fracturing." 5. Ships disabled. 2 more retreating. Planetary command structure fragmented. Albright gave the final order: send ground reinforcements. Secure the survivors and send a message to the Council. The communications officer blinked. "What message, sir?" He stared out at the stars as another Vorik dreadnought detonated in silence. "Tell them we've stopped asking permission." That night, on the surface of Ferix Prime, beneath a shattered sky and the embers of resistance fires, Captain Elena Miles walked through the wreckage of her city. Beside her stood soldiers Earthborn, fresh from orbit, battered but alive. She turned to Chun, his arm in a sling but grinning through his cracked lip. "Did you see them?" he asked. "The Earthships?" She nodded. "Like thunder. Only angrier." In the distance, an Earth banner rose on a makeshift flagpole above the cave entrance. Worn, torn, but whole, and above it, the Vorik retreated. "For now, Captain Miles," whispered through clenched teeth, "you made a mistake. You thought you understood what we were, but we're not your prey. We're your lesson." Behind her, the stars still burned, but this time they burned for them. The war wasn't over. It had only changed shape. A week had passed since Earth's fleet shattered the Vorik armada above Ferix Prime, but the ground still trembled with tension. Victory had given the survivors breath, but not peace. In the cratered plains of the colony, scattered resistance groups continued hunting down stray Vorik units that had gone dark, burrowed deep, or simply refused to surrender. Some fought until the last breath. Others simply vanished. Captain Elena Miles knew better than to call it silence. Silence was never peace. Silence was preparation. She stood in what remained of the colony's administrative tower, half collapsed, reinforced with carbon strut beams and tented tarps, but still upright. A new command center had been established inside, running off. Portable nuclear cores dropped from orbit. The scent of ash and melted electronics lingered like a ghost. In the command room, Admiral Keon Albright reviewed fresh intel streamed in from Terran recon drones now canvassing the hemisphere. "Heat signatures," he said, pointing to flickering red markers moving beneath the surface. "They're not retreating, they're regrouping." Captain Miles leaned in, narrowing her eyes at the map. "Tunnels?" "More than that. Buried structures. We thought they landed from orbit, but they'd been digging before we even saw them, listening, studying." Dr. Yarava stepped forward, eyes scanning lines of data on her wrist console. "This isn't just war. This is containment. The Vorik didn't expect a fight, but they prepared for one anyway. That means they know something we don't." Albright's jaw tightened. "We need to find out what." They didn't wait. At dawn, Miles led Alpha Team deep into the verdant expanse, once a terraformed jungle engineered to support Ferix's agriculture sector. Now it was a twisted ruin. Dead trees, fried canopy pods, scorched soil. But beneath the desolation, life moved wrong, heavy. Careful. They entered a crater at grid marker 77 Raven, where drone footage showed faint mechanical movement. What they found was a false rock face covering a smooth metallic surface, Vorik. Alloy. Alive with heat, Corporal Ames set the charges. The explosion was controlled, brief, and then the rock fell away like paper. A tunnel mouth yawned open, spiraling into the planet's crust. Inside was something the Terrans weren't prepared for. Not weapons, not armor, archives, vast, glowing chambers etched with Vorik symbols. Banks of bioluminescent neural mesh, pulsing. Like organic minds in stasis. Holograms flickered into the air, images of Earth, of human cities, of names. They'd been watching Earth for decades. Centuries, perhaps. Miles walked through the quiet space, her boots echoing. She stopped before one hologram, a three-dimensional map of Earth's surface. Overlaid with strange code dots, she recognized the cities. New Delhi, Lagos, São Paulo, Denver. Red. Crosses marked them all. Dr. Voss moved in beside her, reading the alien code. Her voice was hollow. "This isn't a war log," she whispered. "It's a prophecy." Albright's voice came through her earpiece. "Say again?" Voss tapped the display, translating as she read. "The burned ones will awaken. The cycle returns. Their chaos is memory. Their flame is contagion. Contain them before the fire spreads." Miles looked around at the alien archive, at the reverence, the terror buried in the Vorik symbols. "They knew," she said, "long before we did. They weren't afraid of our weapons. They were afraid of us." Meanwhile, high above Ferix Prime, the Galactic Council convened in emergency session. For the first time in 3,000 years, the session was not hosted at Luxor Delta. It had been relocated temporarily to the orbiting observatory of Selner 4 under Council security oversight, but the mood was unchanged. Fear still hovered. Like smoke, Varel's crystal form pulsed with subdued anxiety. "The Terrans have shattered the Vorik war fleet," he said. "They've liberated their colony and uncovered ancient Vorik archives that confirm what many feared." Across the chamber, Chancellor Kell of the Tendari Confederation leaned forward, her many eyes narrowing. "You mean the prophecy? Myth of the burned ones." "Not myth," Virel said. "Pattern." Other delegates stirred. Some protested. Others leaned into their fears. Virel raised a single hand of refracted light. "We face a species that should not exist as they do. Adaptive without restraint. Compassionate without logic. Aggressive without hunger. They do not evolve, they erupt. Then what do you propose?" Kell demanded. Silence. Then Virel spoke the unthinkable. "A containment field, planetary, around Earth." The chamber erupted. Voices screamed across species. "You'd cage a sentient race? You'd provoke a war with a power you clearly don't understand." Virel didn't blink. "I don't propose it to punish. I propose it to survive." But even as the Council descended into chaos, their own observatory relays blinked with fresh data. Human ships were moving. Not just on Ferix, on the edge of Council space. In the silent systems beyond the Rigara line, not attacking. Just present. Watching. Waiting. On Ferix, Miles stood outside the tunnel complex, watching storm clouds build in the distance. She turned as Admiral Albright joined her, his boots heavy. "On scorched rock. We've been played," he said. "The Vorik didn't come to defeat us. They came to stop us." "And they failed," Miles said. "For now." Voss approached, holding a small Vorik memory core sealed in a stasis chamber. "We translated the last entries," she said. Albright looked at her. "And?" Her voice dropped. "They don't fear us because we're strong. They fear us because we're inevitable." Back aboard the UES Indomitable, Albright stood before the tactical map of the galaxy. New fleet routes were appearing every hour. Shipyards on Mars and Luna were at full capacity. Earth had entered a state of total strategic mobilization. Albright placed a hand on the display. Then he spoke to no one in particular. Let them watch. He tapped a Terran emblem, pulsing red and white at the center of the stars. We're not the fire they thought we were. He turned. We're the spark that burns empires. The galactic night was quiet again, but it was no longer safe. In the void between systems, far beyond the reach of navigational beacons and trade lanes, a single Terran vessel drifted through the dark. The UES Whisper, a Black Ops science ship, outfitted with next-generation stealth plating and gravitic cloaking, moved with ghost-like precision through uncharted space. Its mission had no public record. Its destination had no name. On board, Dr. Yara Voss sat in silent tension, watching the data feed stream across her terminal. The Vorik memory core they'd recovered from Ferix Prime had led them here, coordinates deep in the galactic dead zone. There were no planets, no stars. Just emptiness. Or so it seemed. Approaching target vector, said Lieutenant Sorik, her voice taut. Something's warping ahead. Not space. Not mass either. It's memory, Voss interrupted, eyes widening. It's a memory field. She stood slowly, the hair rising on the back of her neck. That's why they were afraid. That's why the Vorik attacked. Not because of what we are, but because of where we come from. As the whisper slid forward, something emerged from the dark. A massive construct, so ancient it had no light of its own just reflection. A derelict station, large enough to eclipse moons, suspended by decaying gravimetric fields and the sheer will of forgotten technology. On its fractured hull were markings older than language. And at the center of those symbols, a human handprint. Voss stared in silence. This isn't alien. The captain turned. You're saying humans built this? No, Voss whispered. We were this. Back on Earth, in the council chamber of Geneva Prime, Admiral Keon Albright addressed a live summit of Terran leaders. Behind him stood the new flag of Earth, a solar ring encircling a flame. The Vorik are finished, he said. Their empire collapsed from the inside out. Their subject races, inspired by Ferix, have risen. The war is over. But peace does not follow automatically. Because we now know we were never meant to just survive in the stars. He tapped the interface, and the image of the derelict from deep space appeared on every screen. This structure predates the Council, predates all known civilization, and it has Terran genetic markers embedded in its core protocols. Gasps echoed across the chamber. Some leaders leaned forward in disbelief. Others leaned back in fear. Albright didn't flinch. We are not new to the galaxy. We are returning to it. Aboard the Whisper, Voss entered the ancient station. Her boots crunched on alien dust, but the walls felt familiar. Lights flickered on, reacting to her presence. The first room they entered contained murals massive, carved into metal, depicting humans walking with beings of light and shadow. Some showed unity. Others showed war. One mural showed Earth, bright and proud, rimmed with fire, and then blackened, cast into exile. Another mural followed it, a single spark igniting 1,000 new stars. Cycles, Voss said. We've done this before. Grown too fast, burned too bright, we were sealed away. Forgotten. And now, a console came to life. It showed a map, not of the galaxy, of the next one, in the ruins of the Vorik capital. A transmission crackled to life. Not a demand. Not a warning. A message. We will not conquer. We will not kneel. But we will remember, and we will walk forward not alone, but not behind. The Terran flame burns again, not for vengeance, for purpose. The signal spread across the stars. Through former war zones, through ancient council channels, through resistance networks still blinking in the dark, and the galaxy changed. not all at once, but unmistakably. Years passed. Ferix Prime became more than a colony. It became symbol. A place where species met not as invader and defender, but as equals. The scars remained, but they were part of the foundation now. Elena Miles was appointed as the first governor of the Terran outer colonies. Her statue stood at the edge of Hope Sector, still cracked and worn, still looking skyward. Dr. Yaravas became Earth's chief diplomatic strategist to the reformed Galactic Council, her first act being the Open Flame Accords, a pact allowing any species to seek asylum under the Terran banner, regardless of their political past. Admiral Albright retired to Luna Base, though many suspected he still advised from the shadows. His words, "Let them watch," became a rallying cry etched into the hull of every deep space exploration vessel Earth launched. And Earth didn't become an empire. It became an answer, a home for those too wild, too scarred, too bright for systems built on fear. The stars bent differently now. Where once they shimmered with distance and dread, now they shimmered with invitation. On a clear night in Geneva, beneath a canopy of living light displays and real stars, a young girl looked up and asked her grandfather, "Is it true? That we were just a tiny species once? That we were weak?" Her grandfather smiled. "We were, but we remembered what others forgot." She blinked. "What did we remember?" He turned his gaze skyward. "That fire isn't dangerous because it burns. It's dangerous because it grows." And somewhere, light years away, in the void between galaxies, a Terran ship crossed a threshold never charted, carrying explorers, scholars, survivors, and warriors. Above their hull, glowing in radiant white, were the words that told all who saw, "We are the fire."